My name is Henry Williams, and I've always believed that stability is built in small, consistent steps. I'm 37, married for 9 years, and the father of a 7-year-old boy who thinks the world of both his parents. For most of my adult life, I've worked at a mid-level position in logistics, steady pay, slow promotions, nothing glamorous but dependable. My wife, Claire, used to work in human resources before a health scare forced her to quit several years ago. What began as a temporary break slowly became permanent. At first, I didn't complain. Her recovery mattered more than any paycheck. I picked up extra hours, cut back on hobbies, and told myself we were a team. When she got better, she tried another job, but left after a few months saying the stress was too much. She said she didn't want to relapse. I didn't question it then. I wanted to believe her. But 3 years have passed. Her doctor gave her a clean bill of health long ago, yet she hasn't gone back to work. Most days she stays home watching short videos or ordering takeout. I'd come home from a long shift to find receipts from delivery apps and bags of fast food scattered around. She always promised to cut down, but the pattern never changed. Still, I kept quiet. I thought patience was the price of peace. Then came the call from my father that changed everything. My grandfather had passed away. He was the last of my grandparents and the one I'd been closest to. He was practical, humble, and good with money, everything I've tried to be. I didn't expect anything from his estate, but a few weeks later, I received the news he had left me over $200,000. I remember sitting at the kitchen table that night, the letter trembling in my hand. It wasn't lottery money, but it was enough to change our lives. I told Claire right away. She hugged me, said all the right words about being proud and grateful, but behind her eyes, something flickered. I brushed it off at first. I told her my plan: pay down the mortgage, set up a college fund for our son, invest the rest safely so we could grow it instead of wasting it. I even made an appointment with a financial advisor to confirm the best steps. She nodded along, but her enthusiasm was muted. The only time she lit up was when she said, "We should finally take that vacation we never could afford. Maybe Disney or somewhere tropical." I smiled and said maybe later. Let's get the basics covered first. She didn't like that answer. Over the next few weeks, she brought it up again and again, sometimes casually, sometimes with irritation. "Henry, we deserve to live a little," she'd say. "You work so hard, and I've been through so much. We need to enjoy this before life passes us by." I agreed that she wasn't wrong, but I also knew how fast money disappears when people start treating it like air. I'd seen it happen to others. I explained that even a few bad choices could turn this windfall into nothing within a couple of years. Her silence turned to coldness. She began calling me stingy, then obsessed with control. She'd scroll through her phone while I spoke, half listening, pretending to agree. One evening, she muttered, "You've never given me anything nice. Not once." I asked her to repeat it. She wouldn't. I started to see our differences more clearly. I was thinking about security, about the long road. She was thinking about immediate comfort, even luxury. The more I resisted, the more distant she became. Then I noticed something else. She was messaging, constantly smiling at her phone more than she smiled at me. When I asked, she said she was chatting with her friend Lindsay, the one who always had opinions about our marriage. I didn't press it. Still, the feeling that something was shifting in our home wouldn't go away. Weeks later, as I sat in traffic after work, my phone buzzed. Claire's name appeared on the screen. I answered, but no one spoke. Then I heard laughter, a man's voice in the background. My stomach dropped. I said her name twice. She didn't respond. The call ended. I called back. This time she answered, her voice calm, too calm. "I'm at home," she said. "You're imagining things." I left work early, telling my boss there was an emergency. The drive home was a blur. When I walked in, she was there acting normal, too normal. The house smelled faintly of a scent I didn't recognize, something sharp and masculine. I saw a glass on the counter, not ours. A jacket draped over a chair. "Who was here?" I asked. "No one," she said without even looking at me. I walked into the bedroom. On the floor near the nightstand lay an empty wrapper, small, crumpled, impossible to misinterpret. My throat went dry. "Claire," I said, my voice shaking, "what is this?" She looked at it, then at me, and shrugged. "Maybe it's old." You're overreacting." Her calmness made my chest burn. I wanted to shout to demand an explanation, but something told me that was exactly what she wanted to push me past reason. That night after she went to bed, I sat in the living room staring at the wall. My hands trembled as I thought about everything I had ignored: the sudden mood swings, the secrecy, the obsession with money that wasn't even hers. The realization settled like a weight on my chest. She wasn't just unhappy, she was planning something, and I had no idea how far she was willing to go to get it. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept thinking about the call, about her tone, about the strange calm in her eyes. Somewhere between midnight and morning, I understood the inheritance hadn't changed us. It had revealed us. One of us wanted security, the other wanted escape, and soon I was going to find out just how deep that divide ran. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Claire was still asleep, curled up like nothing had happened. I watched her for a moment, wondering how long she had been living a separate life under the same roof. The idea that she might be planning something deliberate was too heavy to face outright. But part of me already knew. I drove to work, tried to bury myself in spreadsheets and delivery schedules, but the thought of that phone call and the unfamiliar scent in our bedroom followed me everywhere. I replayed her voice in my head, how calm she'd been, how unbothered. It didn't sound like guilt. It sounded like indifference. That night when I got home, she acted like nothing was wrong. She even asked what I wanted for dinner. I stared at her for a long second before answering. "Anything's fine." She nodded and kept scrolling through her phone. It became a routine over the next few days, her glued to the screen, me pretending not to notice. The air between us was dense, like both of us were waiting for the other to make a move. I started checking her phone bills, something I'd never done before. That's when I saw a number that kept appearing: late-night calls, long durations. I saved the number and searched it online. It belonged to a man named Victor Allen, who worked at a company just a few miles away. My hands went cold. I told myself I needed proof before saying anything. I didn't want to accuse my wife of betrayal without evidence. So I waited. 2 days later, while at work, I got another call from her again. No words. Just background noise. A man's voice muffled laughter. I hung up and called right back. She didn't answer. When she finally did, her voice trembled slightly. "Sorry, I dropped my phone." "What's wrong?" "Who's with you?" I asked. "No one, Henry. Stop being paranoid." But her voice wasn't steady. This time I didn't ask for permission to leave, I just grabbed my keys and drove home, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I parked down the street trying to gather myself. The blinds were half closed, and from the narrow opening I saw movement, someone's shadow crossing the hallway. I waited 5 minutes. Then 10. My palms were slick with sweat. Finally, I stepped out and walked toward the house. The front door was locked. I used my key, opened it quietly, and stepped inside. Silence. Then footsteps. Claire emerged from the hallway wearing her robe, surprised but not shocked. "You're home early," she said. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Who's here?" "No one." She smiled faintly, but her eyes darted away. The smell hit me again, same cologne, sharp and masculine. My stomach tightened. I walked past her into the bedroom. The bed was made too perfectly, as if someone had just done it to erase evidence. I noticed the small trash bin by the dresser was missing. I went into the kitchen. The back door was unlocked. I stepped outside, nothing. Whoever had been there was gone. When I came back in, Claire was standing by the sofa, her arms crossed. "Henry, you're scaring me. You can't just storm in like this." I stared at her at the way she was trying to turn this around. "You called me by accident," I said quietly. I heard him. Her jaw tightened. "You're imagining things." I wanted to scream, but instead I walked to the coffee table where her phone sat. I picked it up. She lunged for it. "Give that back." I held it out of reach. "Then tell me the truth." She froze. Her face hardened, the mask slipping. "You really want to know?" I didn't answer. I just unlocked the phone using her birthday. It opened instantly. The messages were right there. Conversation threads with a contact named Victor. The words were ordinary enough until they weren't. "Come by after lunch. He'll be at work. Bring protection." My vision blurred as I scrolled. Then I saw another thread with Lindsay. Claire had written, "He's being impossible. He wants to lock the money away forever. I deserve something too. If this doesn't work, I'll find another way." My stomach dropped. She'd been plotting. I turned the screen toward her. "What is this?" She didn't flinch. "You shouldn't have looked. That's all you have to say," I asked, my voice shaking. She shrugged, sat down, and muttered I was tired of pretending. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the sound of my heartbeat. I started recording the screen with my own phone, every message, every line. Claire didn't even try to stop me until she realized what I was doing. Then she lunged forward, scratching at my arms, trying to grab the phone. I pushed her away, not hard, but enough to make her stumble. She glared at me like I was the intruder. "You're pathetic," she spat. That was the breaking point. "I want a divorce," I said. Her expression didn't change. Instead, she smiled faint and cruel. "Good. Saves me the trouble." For a second, I couldn't breathe. I had imagined tears, denial, even rage, but not this calm satisfaction. That's when it hit me she wanted this. She wanted me to find out. I left the house that night, driving with no destination. I checked into a cheap motel by the highway and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the cracked wallpaper. Everything inside me felt hollow. She hadn't just cheated, she'd orchestrated it. The next day, I spoke with a friend of mine, a paralegal named Tom. He told me something that made everything click. If she divorces you after you receive the inheritance, she could try to claim part of it as marital property. It made sense now, the sudden coldness, the staged arguments, even the way she'd stopped caring if I found out. She didn't just want to leave, she wanted to leave with half my future. I looked down at the messages I had recorded, the evidence of her greed, and realized that maybe for the first time in my life, patience wouldn't save me. I needed to be smarter, colder. I needed to make sure that if she wanted war, she'd be the one walking away empty-handed. And so began the quiet revenge. I didn't sleep much during those first few nights at the motel. The air conditioner rattled all night, and every sound from the hallway felt like someone pacing outside my door. I wasn't afraid, not exactly. I was calculating. For years, I had built my life on trust, trusting my wife, trusting that patience would fix things, trusting that people always come back to reason. But trust was what got me blindsided. Claire had turned that very word into a weapon. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney. His name was David Chen, a calm, practical man who had seen too many cases like mine. I explained everything, the inheritance, the call, the messages. He listened carefully and said, "The key thing here, Henry, is that you didn't mix your inheritance into joint accounts." "Did you?" "No," I said. "It's still in a separate account under my name." He nodded slowly. "Good. That's going to matter." David explained how inheritance could be considered marital property only if it was commingled, used to pay shared debts, or deposited into a joint fund. I had kept it clean, untouched, except for the small portion I'd used to pay the financial advisor. That decision, made out of caution, had just become my best defense. But I still had a problem. Claire had already beaten me to the first move. 2 days after I left home, I was served divorce papers. She filed first, claiming emotional neglect and financial control. Reading those words made me laugh out loud, a short, bitter sound I didn't recognize as my own. She wasn't just playing the victim, she was rewriting history. When I told David, he wasn't surprised. "That's a common tactic," he said. "She's trying to control the narrative, but if we can prove motive, that she was planning this for financial gain, the judge will see through it." That was where my recordings came in. Every message I had captured on her phone from Victor, from Lindsay, became evidence of intent. The fact that she discussed getting her cut of the inheritance made it clear what this was really about. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like control return to me. I went home during the day to see my son Eli, who didn't understand why Dad was staying somewhere else for work. Claire wasn't hostile in front of him, but her eyes were icy when he wasn't looking. I could almost hear her thoughts. "You're not supposed to be this calm." She expected a breakdown. Instead, she got silence. While she wasted time venting to her friends, I was building a file. Screenshots, bank statements, phone logs, anything that proved I hadn't mixed the inheritance with shared assets. David helped me organize it into a binder. "Judges like clarity," he said. Make it easy for him to see who's being honest. The first court hearing was brutal. Claire sat across the room from me in a crisp blazer, pretending to be composed. Her lawyer painted her as a devoted wife abandoned emotionally by a husband obsessed with money. When it was my turn, David calmly presented the evidence, the texts, the call logs, the video recording from her phone. The room went quiet as the judge scrolled through the printed messages. "He's being impossible. I'll make sure I get my share no matter what," the judge read aloud. His eyebrows lifted. "Who wrote this?" "Your Honor," David said, "that's a direct quote from Mrs. Williams' messages with her friend. It establishes her intent to manipulate the divorce process for financial gain." Claire shifted uncomfortably but didn't deny it. Her lawyer tried to spin it, venting between friends a misunderstanding taken out of context. But even the judge looked unconvinced. When we walked out of the courtroom, David put a hand on my shoulder. "You did well. You stayed calm. That matters." I didn't feel victorious. I felt drained but focused. Outside, I saw Claire talking to her lawyer, her face flushed with anger. When her eyes met mine, she didn't look ashamed. She looked defiant. That told me everything I needed to know. She still thought she could win. The next few weeks were a grind of paperwork, custody evaluations, and endless meetings. I made sure every move I made was strategic, no emotional texts, no impulsive visits. I was polite, predictable, and boring. It was infuriating her. One night I got a message from an unknown number. It was Victor. "You think you're smarter than her," it read. I didn't reply. I just took a screenshot and forwarded it to David. "Good call," he said. "Don't engage. Every record counts." The day of the property settlement hearing finally arrived. Claire had been counting on the judge ordering that half the inheritance be divided. But the moment David presented the paper trail, separate accounts, timestamps, proof the funds were untouched, her entire argument fell apart. Then came the real blow. David submitted the text, where she told Lindsay, "Once he files, I'll claim emotional distress and half the inheritance. Easy win." The judge leaned back, unimpressed. "Mrs. Williams, it appears the distress was part of your plan." Claire didn't speak. Her lawyer mumbled something about context, but it was over. When the session ended, David turned to me and whispered, "She's not getting a penny." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt empty. Winning didn't erase the betrayal. It didn't fix what had been lost. But it did protect what mattered: my son's future, my grandfather's legacy, and the quiet part of myself that still believed in fairness. After court, Claire tried to stop me in the hallway. "You ruined my life," she said through gritted teeth. "No," I said calmly. "You did that when you decided money was worth more than trust." She stood, frozen eyes wide, realizing for the first time that she'd lost the only leverage she ever thought she had. That night, I went back to the motel and opened my grandfather's old letter again. At the bottom, written in his shaky handwriting, were the words I had missed before. "Henry, money shows you who people are. Spend it wisely, but more importantly, guard your peace." I finally understood what he meant. And I was just getting started. The divorce became official on a gray Thursday morning. The courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and floor polish, the kind of scent that settles into memories you never asked to keep. I sat on one side, Claire on the other, our lawyers in between like referees in a match that had already gone too long. When the judge read the final ruling, his tone was clinical joint custody for our son Eli. The House awarded to Claire for the child's stability, temporary alimony subject to review in 1 year, and most importantly, the inheritance was ruled non-marital property, untouched, mine. The words landed like a quiet verdict on everything that had gone wrong between us. Claire stared straight ahead, expression frozen, but the twitch in her jaw betrayed the truth. She'd lost the only thing she really fought for. As the gavel fell, a strange calm came over me. Not triumph, not joy, just relief, clean and quiet like the air after a long storm. Outside the courthouse, David clapped me on the shoulder. "You handled this the right way," he said. "You kept your head while she tried to break you. That's rare." I nodded. "I just wanted the truth to count for something." He smiled faintly. It did. When Claire walked past us, she didn't look at me. She brushed by, phone in hand, already calling someone. The heels of her shoes clicked against the marble floor like a metronome marking the end of a chapter. In the weeks that followed, I didn't celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. I still had to rebuild, find a new place, and help Eli understand why his parents lived in two homes now. He took it better than I expected. Kids have a way of seeing truth long before adults do. One night, while unpacking boxes in my new apartment, Eli found an old photo of the three of us at the park. He turned it over in his small hands and asked Dad, "Are you mad at Mom?" I paused. "No, buddy. I'm just done being hurt." He nodded as if that made perfect sense. Then he taped the photo to the fridge. "So we don't forget the good parts," he said. That moment almost broke me. I kept my routine simple. Work, pick up Eli, cook dinner. On weekends, we'd go for bike rides or watch movies. I started sleeping better, real sleep, not the half-awake kind where you brace for the next fight. The inheritance, now untouched and fully protected, became something else entirely. It wasn't just money anymore, it was proof that patience could outlast deceit. I used part of it to buy a modest townhouse nearby a place with a small yard and a workshop in the back. I'd promised my grandfather I'd use the money wisely, and that's what I was finally doing. One evening, I sat in that workshop surrounded by the quiet hum of the world outside, reading through the last pages of my grandfather's old ledger. In his careful handwriting, he had written, "Money doesn't change people, it reveals them." I finally understood. Claire had spent months pretending to be the victim, calling herself the one who was wronged. But in the end, all the pretending in the world couldn't rewrite what she'd done. She had gambled her integrity for a chance at someone else's fortune and lost both. About a month after the ruling, she called me. I stared at her name flashing across the screen for a long minute before answering. "Henry," she said, voice sharp but uncertain. "I think the alimony decision was unfair. I've talked to another lawyer." "Claire," I interrupted, calm and measured. "Don't waste your time. The evidence is still there. The texts, the video, everything." There was a long pause. Then softer, she said, "You really don't forgive me, do you?" I took a breath. "Forgiveness isn't the issue. I just don't believe in repeating mistakes." She didn't reply. The line went dead. That was the last time she ever called me about anything other than Eli. Spring came, and with it, a strange sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I was finally free of the constant tension, the endless arguments about money and resentment. I had my son, my work, and the knowledge that I'd navigated through betrayal without becoming bitter. One weekend, I used a portion of the inheritance to take Eli on a trip, just the two of us. We went to Disneyland, the same trip Claire had begged for months earlier. As we stood in line for the rides, Eli looked up at me and said, "Mom said we'd never be able to afford this." I smiled. She was wrong. He grinned. "You always figure things out." I didn't correct him. I let him believe that. When we got home, I printed a photo from that trip, Eli on my shoulders laughing as fireworks exploded behind us. I framed it and set it on the shelf beside my grandfather's old photo. 2 generations, 2 lessons about trust and strength. Sometimes when I think back, I still wonder if there was a single moment where things could have gone differently. If I'd noticed the distance sooner. If she'd been honest about what she wanted. But I've learned not to linger there. Some people only understand value when it's gone. Claire got the house, yes. She got alimony, yes. But she also got the emptiest kind of victory, one without integrity, one without peace. I got something better, clarity. The kind that doesn't come from revenge, but from survival. From knowing that you didn't have to destroy someone to win, you just had to let their own choices finish the job. A few nights ago, I found the recording again, the one of her phone screen, the texts that started it all. For a moment, I hovered over the delete button. Then I pressed it. Some wars don't need trophies. The past doesn't deserve that kind of space. As I turned off the lights and looked around my quiet home, I realized something simple and true justice hadn't come from the court or the money. It had come from endurance, from refusing to let betrayal define me. My grandfather had written, "Guard your peace." And for the first time in years, I finally was. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.